Okay, and welcome to this week's webinar for the Regional Transportation Plan hosted by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. This week's topic is technology. So we'll be walking you through the technology framework and the proposed or imagined projects within the Regional Transportation Plan update looking through 2045. And definitely interested in getting input and feedback on what technology projects you're interested in that you see presented today or not today or that you've seen in other communities. So with that, I'll go over the agenda. We'll have a quick presentation by our speaker today, who I'll introduce next for about 15 minutes, and then we will go to a question and answer. In your Zoom window, you should have a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or at the top. Somewhere on your screen, you'll have the Q&A. Please put your questions in the question and answer section. We will have someone monitoring that. So if you've got a clarifying question, they will be answering those live, but we'll also be saving some of those questions towards the end. And also, if there's multiple questions on the same topic, I may not read each question individually, but summarize those questions into one to make sure we can get to more questions overall. Everyone has been muted, so again, use that Q&A button to ask questions. There's also a chat, and we will be recording this webinar and sending out the slides afterwards to all of those that have attended. So our speaker today is Melanie Sloan. Melanie is the Senior Transportation Planner for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and she works closely with both internal and external partners to develop and implement the vision of the Regional Transportation Plan, what you're learning about today. And Melanie joined TRPA in 2019, and she's bringing experience in transportation planning in Colorado communities of Boulder and Adams County, and I can definitely tell you that Melanie brings a wealth of knowledge from Colorado and a lot of the innovative things they're doing out there to Tahoe. So we are lucky to have her. And with that, I will let her take it away.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending. I'm just presenting here a brief outline of our discussion today. To start, I'll give a quick overview of the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, for those of you who may not be familiar with that. I'll then talk about our vision for technology at Lake Tahoe, discuss who contributes to achieving that vision, and give an overview of the framework and some of the proposed projects for technology. As Devin said, we'll finish with Q&A. So if you have questions at any time during the presentation, write them in that Q&A box. We'll answer those at the end. Before we begin, I just want to note technology is not really a standalone strategy. Rather, it supports transit, trails, and communities, our other focus areas in the RTP. So TRPA, in addition to being a regional regulatory agency, is also a metropolitan planning organization, which means we are charged with maintaining the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, for the entire Lake Tahoe region. The RTP is updated every 4 years, looks forward 25 years, and outlines the vision for transportation and defines the strategies for implementation. If it has to do with transportation, it's in the RTP. And that's important because projects in the RTP are projects that are eligible for funding. And the RTP is built on 4 pillars, which are also the themes of the first 4 sessions of our webinar series: trails, transit, technology, and communities. Goals, policies, and projects in the RTP fall into one of those 4 categories. So again, if you missed the trails or transit webinars, they're available at the RTP website, which is trpa.org/RTP. Let's start talking about technology. So technology has so much to offer to transportation. It can improve efficiency of the transportation infrastructure. Just sharing information empowers people to make smart and more efficient travel plans. It can provide enough convenience that can alter travel decisions. It can make better connections between your transportation choices, linking your bike trip and a transit trip, for example. It can also provide environmental benefits by reducing vehicle emissions, providing less cars on the road, less congestion and less idling, as well as supporting electric vehicles and other zero-emission vehicles, and that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Technology can also improve safety, whether it's road conditions, weather events, evacuations. The information is really important. And real-time data collection can also provide better response and better planning. So it's our vision to use technology as a powerful catalyst towards achieving Tahoe's mobility and environmental goals. But we can't do that without partners. Lake Tahoe partners have and will continue to add technology to transit, trails, and corridors to serve residents, commuters, and visitors. Each agency can also accommodate linkages to others for better coordination. And the partners have implemented several technology projects over the past few years, and that prepares us to better address peak demand visitation and to provide safer and more equitable access to transportation information and travel options. Some successes include data collection. Last week, my colleague Kira Smith demonstrated a new data set based on cell phone information that allows us to better plan for and provide transit service. Also, we've seen installation of changeable or variable message signs that provides information on road, weather, and travel times. And our transit providers in the north with TART and in the south with TTD have installed vehicle tracking technology. They know where their buses are, and the rider knows when they're about to arrive. This past winter season, Heavenly installed information signs at their California lodge, providing real-time shuttle location and arrival information. The technology framework for the RTP has 5 components. It focuses on traveler information, traffic management and safety, transit accessibility and service, maintenance, and integration and coordination. For traveler information, residents, commuters, and visitors, they all use varying types of technology to inform their travel decisions, including when's the best time to travel and how long that might take, as well as what's the best way to get there. Is it by bike or by bus? As well as supporting the use of electric and zero-emission vehicles. Parking detection at major destinations can also play a key role by providing information to the traveler so they can better plan their trip. Agencies that plan the transportation system, build and maintain roads and paths, and operate transit use technology both to collect travel data and to manage their systems for efficiency and safety. Some strategies here include adaptive corridor management, which seeks to use the existing roadway better during peak travel times, such as allowing buses to use the shoulder. Other strategies include parking management and improved traffic signal coordination and timing. Transit accessibility and service seeks to increase visitor and resident awareness about travel options available. And that can include transit, but also biking and walking. And it also can promote multimodal travel options. That's linking, like, for example, your bike trip and your transit trip. Here is where technology can vastly improve first and last mile connections. Strategies here include real-time transit service information, transit priority at traffic signals, mobility hubs, which will include charging for electric bikes and buses. Maintenance ensures roads and paths are kept in a good and safe condition. Snow removal on roads and paths provide for safe and year-round travel. Some strategies here include informing travelers about delays from maintenance as well as construction and special events. Traffic management around work zones and traveler information about maintenance activities are both essential to protecting the work crews and the traveling public. Integration and coordination is key to achieving the potential of technology. Strategies include increasing how and how quickly our partners share information and coordinate, for example, during emergencies or special events. And radio and cellular telephone capabilities are key to this strategy. Now, the update to the RTP includes developing a list of projects to be implemented over the next 25 years. That list is developed through consultation with all of the partners in the basin. The list here represents a sampling of technology projects proposed for the near term, and I'll share a few of these in the next slide. And these are just representations of what these projects could be. For example, parking management. We know that will provide information on available parking at popular destinations with travelers via roadside dynamic message signs, internet applications, and mobile devices for better pre-trip planning. Corridor planning, a part of the community focus that will be next week's webinar, will also consider parking management, and you'll hear more about that then. Developing a smartphone app provides travelers with information on transit service and timing, parking availability, and details like cost, as well as broader roadway traffic information. And that allows them to better plan and experience their trip. Here, that's represented by Tow2Go, and that's just an example. There are a lot of options, and many are possible for this particular approach. Automatic passenger counters on buses is a typical technology project. It's not very jazzy, but it has the ability to help us achieve our goals and vision. Automatic passenger counters on buses will provide better understanding of how many people are using transit in the basin and from what stops. That improves transit planning and service. Other projects not represented here that we propose for the short term include dynamic or changeable message signs being installed in more places in the basin, as well as traffic signal improvements, which could include coordination to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion, bike detection to provide safer travel, and transit priority to keep buses on time. The proposed projects for the long term look to the later portion of the next 25 years. And this list, again, is a sampling of technology projects proposed for the long term. The next slide features a few examples. Parking management will continue to evolve as it is planned for and implemented basin-wide. Intelligent and adaptive traffic management uses real-time data to monitor and respond to traffic and safety needs on the roadway, and TRPA's travel management program expands on successes of linking Tahoe programs, such as the Commute Challenge, by providing benefits to those who ride the bus, walk, bike, or use electric vehicles. Another long-term project not represented here is adaptive traffic management on State Routes 89 and 267 and US 50 in California. That proposes to provide bus-only lanes, perhaps on shoulders, or modified lane configurations during peak travel times. Also, US 50 along the East Shore in Nevada corridor planning will also consider adaptive traffic management. Now, the draft list of projects for the RTP, both short and long term, will be available soon on the RTP webpage. It'll include these as well as others. So stay tuned at trpa.org/RTP. That concludes my presentation for technology, and we'll go to Q&A in just a moment. But before we do, I want to let you know we're hosting 2 more webinars, Communities next Monday, May 11th, and Partnerships in 2 weeks on May 18th, both at noon. Communities will discuss the holistic vision of transportation where all focus areas come together to support a healthy environment and a high quality of life for residents and visitors. Partnerships is just that, an opportunity to celebrate and make clear how partnerships and collaboration are key to achieving the transportation vision of the RTP in Tahoe. You can visit this webpage, trpa.org/RTP/get-involved to register for those webinars. And with that, we'll go to Q&A. If you haven't already, submit your question in the Q&A button. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Melanie, for walking us through technology and how it connects to Tahoe. We do have a few questions that have come in. This first one is actually 2 questions, but I'll read them together since they fit. The first is there any work being done currently on phone app for tracking It seems like maybe for better understanding visitor patterns, and then some input and asking about streetlight data. And I can help you out on that as well if you want me to add on after you answer.
Yeah, so the first question was if an app had been is in the process of being developed to track travelers, is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's what it sounds like they're asking.
Yeah. I don't think we're in the process of developing an app to track travelers. Right now, we're really interested in focusing on providing the information to inform people to make the transportation choices appropriate for their travel needs and for that also support our goals. I do think that the data that's becoming available, like my colleague Kira Smith demonstrated during the last webinar, through cell phones, independent of an app that we've developed, has provided us with greater information to understand travel patterns and to develop better planning approaches.
Great. And then the second part of that question about the streetlight data, which you mentioned and was mentioned in our last corridor, our last presentation, I would just add that the streetlight data is one company that aggregates cell phone data. It does not represent and track every single cell phone that everyone has in their pockets right now on a real time. So it's not an end-all be-all magical solution, but it is a very new technology and interesting tool added with our other data collection like traffic counts and intercept surveys. So when added to an array of other sources of data that have been collected, the cell phone data, whether it's Streetlight or another company, definitely adds another dimension to our ability to plan. This next question is about Sand Harbor and the state park, and just it's a little specific of a question, but generally it is asking about, you know, how does, and I guess phrasing it in terms of this webinar, you know, how does technology fit into corridors like Highway 28 and parking reservation systems? And sort of, I also see Danielle Hughes from the Tahoe Transportation District on this webinar, and if she wants to send me a message in the chat saying she'd be willing to add in, I don't want to put her on the spot, but if she's willing to contribute, she could also jump on this. But Melanie, just generally, how do you see technology working with parking management systems and recreation sites in the Tahoe Basin?
Yeah, Devin, I think you're exactly right. As I mentioned in the presentation, our partners are really key to both the implementation and the evolution of our approaches. And TTD is the agency who implemented and is advancing parking management on 28. So more broadly, how technology can help on such a corridor, including with parking management, a lot of it is around the ability to track what is available for parking. So sensing, tracking, communicating what's available. And yeah, that could potentially include charging for parking spaces. Sometimes you see that discussed as dynamic parking, knowing when the most popular times are, maybe more expensive to park. And the revenues typically are structured to benefit the corridor or the specific location, or a proportion of each. And so along State Route 28, I'm sure Danielle with TTD can provide more details, but I understand there are discussions about developing these parking management structures there. And it's a really great opportunity to understand what relationships need to be developed, what structures are in place, what technology can help support the goals, as well as how the funds can be distributed to support that parking management, but also other goals along that corridor, including transit service, for example, or bicycle and pedestrian
Perfect.
facilities.
So yeah, I have called Danielle Hughes. So Danielle, I'll unmute you if you want to just add in some specifics about the plans for State Route 28 this summer.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So yes, we are working on parking management on the SR28 corridor, as well as US 50 as part of the US 50 revitalization project. And it's really about trying to give the traveler information prior to getting there. The first phase is really just for a paid program and to kind of promote come early and come late, pay a cheaper rate for providing access along the corridor. Next phase would improve the communication network, as well as bring in the broadband as well as wireless communication network, so that we can provide that information prior to people getting there, as well as some dynamic message boards that will allow people to be aware when, say, Sand Harbor is full and we need to provide other options for getting to our recreation areas. So there's several different elements that go with that. As Melanie was mentioning, it's getting the information to the traveler prior. It's letting people know if there's parking spaces available and such. So it's a iterative process that we continue to build out into the future.
Thanks, Danielle. And then next question was, how does this technology aspect align with the Beta Basin study that was completed several years ago? Melanie, since you weren't here several years ago, that Beta Basin study did look at visitation and visitation patterns from the Bay Area, Sacramento, up to Tahoe. And it's definitely something that those same visitor patterns and suggestions that were outlaid in that report, and how to educate people on getting to Tahoe without their vehicle and real-time information still holds very much true today and within this RTP. We have a question from Facebook that for this plan, the 25 years of the plan, there was no discussion on automated transit shuttles or tolling of visitors for capacity issues. Would you be able to touch on that point? I think Kira did mention a little bit around that automated transit in the last webinar last week.
Yeah, so automated transit shuttles, I would defer to Kira on, because she's been working most closely on that. I did not have a project listed in the short or long term for that, but I think the transit element may speak to that more extensively. As far as the tolling of regional visitors, we do have, TTD is also advancing efforts to try to develop a regional funding mechanism. And I would refer to that endeavor as a means of understanding more of how regional funding and something along cordon pricing or would work.
Hey,
Kira.
Yeah, I could just kind of touch on the automated transit piece of that. And I might be taking this question out of context, but I believe it's referring to kind of, automated vehicles that don't require a driver. And if that's the case, that it is something that exists. Definitely there are pilots around the country, around the world, where transit agencies and private companies are testing automated shuttles. I don't think that that's something that we're considering very closely right now for Tahoe. We definitely need a lot of infrastructure improvements before we can get self-driving cars and self-driving transit buses here in a lot with a lot of them. So it's not really in this RTP yet, but the technology does exist.
I think generally as those things develop and evolve, even between our regional transportation plans updated every 4 years. So it really on a rolling basis, we're incorporating new technology. Even since the last regional transportation plan, something like Mountaineer and Lime weren't in the Tahoe region, and now they're doing tens of thousands of rides a year. So it's rapidly evolving. And then to the regional revenue, I would just comment that onetahoe.org is the website with more information about that. The technology piece of that, because the idea of the funding is a bigger picture, but the technology piece would be it wouldn't be physical toll booths. If you did that, something in theory, it would use technology like license plate readers, which can also be used for paid parking and enforcement at sites as well. Looking at questions. So Melanie, this question is, who actually owns and implements and operates these technology projects that you're outlining in this plan?
Yeah, so that's a great question. As I'd mentioned, we have several partners, and a couple we've heard from mentioned or speaking today. Thank you, Danielle, for helping question. So we often, all these projects are dependent upon coordination and implementation by partnership. Speaking of the infrastructure needs that Kira was talking about to develop the capacity for autonomous shuttles, for example, we have agencies, departments of transportation in both California and Nevada, that when they are reconstructing roadways are installing conduit or capacity for communications. That's helpful for us for some of the things I did mention, but it also helps to provide for these future technologies. And that's an example of how a project mentioned in this presentation, the information signs, for example, as well as through the question and answer period, the autonomous shuttle, really does depend on our partnership to identify the needs and prepare for those so we can take those steps toward the transportation future, whatever that might look like.
Thank you. And then this is going back to some of the more regional transportation initiative or technology initiatives, but how specifically is Caltrans and NDOT systems or information integrated into the strategies of the RTP and sort of in the Tahoe Basin? How do we plug into those state agencies?
Yeah, great question. So, checking it, I mentioned our project list, and those were some of the proposed projects I shared today. That requires us to work very closely with both Caltrans and NDOT, the Nevada Department of Transportation. We speak with them about their plans, their projected plans, check on the status of those, as well as planned implementation timeframe. As well, when we work on strategies, for example, developing this technology-focused area, there's conversations with each of those agencies as well to understand their approach and how best we can see that implemented and support that implementation. And then there's a lot of collaboration. Danielle, if she was unmuted, could tell you about work she's been doing with agencies, including Caltrans and NDOT, to provide better emergency services through a central communication center and what that means, from the technology installed to be able to support it, as well as the coordination amongst agencies to actually undertake that effort. So it's very layered, it's very continuous, and it shows up on almost everything we do, whether it's updating our regional transportation plan or working specifically on projects like corridor plans or that central communication facility.
Great. This next question, actually 2 questions, are about electric vehicle infrastructure in the Tahoe Basin, and I'll actually take that. So myself, Devin Middlebrook, I oversee the Tahoe Truckee Electric Vehicle Readiness Plan, which is the region's plan for electric vehicle infrastructure deployment and adoption of electric vehicles. So since that plan was created in about 2016, there's been rapid deployment and installation of electric vehicle charging stations around the lake, both South Shore and North Shore up to Truckee. That includes really for those personal vehicles and public charging stations and really connecting people. Tahoe was part of a program through ChargePoint, I believe, or no, EVgo, and it was a charging network from Monterey to South Lake Tahoe along 50. So there's that connection there. 80 has regional connections. The Tahoe Transportation District is procuring electric buses and have worked with the community college to put overhead induction chargers at that bus stop transit hub there. So there's a lot going on with electric vehicles around the lake, and we definitely see electric vehicles around being a huge strategy and a huge part of what we're doing. And then the Federal Highways Administration has submitted to define the Tahoe area 80 and 50 as an alternative fuels corridor. So it would receive an official designation and then all the signage that comes along with that. And then Liberty Utilities also has Tahoe Transportation District has submitted to the Federal Highways for that designation. And then the Liberty Utilities has a program where they are deploying DC fast charging stations throughout the region. So I think there's about 7 locations that will be identified and installed within the Tahoe Truckee area. And then the Lake Tahoe Unified School District is also working on procuring some electric buses. So a lot of people are going to electric in the region. This one is what about electric pedal buses that circle the lake and tow a trailer for bikes and strollers? Yeah, so I think that as we move forward with all of the transportation infrastructure, we're looking at making it renewable and sustainable and moving away from fossil fuels as much as possible through electric microtransit, full-size electric buses, electric vehicle infrastructure for everyone, and how do we connect that to recreation. So those were all of the questions that we had submitted. Is there, let's see, we are good there. So thank you all for attending. Melanie, if you wouldn't mind just going to the slide with the upcoming dates. Next Monday, we will be doing our webinar on communities. And this is really starting to look at how all of this starts to come together and be implemented on the ground in projects that you see, like in Kings Beach, or more recently in South Lake Tahoe at Sierra Boulevard this year. And then partnerships, Monday, May 18th, we'll have a panel talking about innovative transportation solutions, and includes the League to Save Lake Tahoe, Downtowner, which is the company that runs the Mountaineer Microtransit service, and Lime, in addition to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. So tune in there, and again, we will be sending out this recording after today's webinar. Thank you all for attending.